You ever watch a movie that everyone says is one of the greatest ever made? You get to the end and you just kind of think, huh? Did I miss something? Well, if that's ever happened to you, there's a pretty good chance the movie you were watching was Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. So today, we're going to try and solve this puzzle. How did a film that's famous for confusing people become, well, an icon?
And this question, which actually kicked off this whole explainer, just nails that feeling, right? It's a super common reaction. So if you felt that disconnect, trust me, you are not alone. So let's follow the clues together and see if we can figure out what's really going on with this film.
Okay, first up, let's just lay out the central problem. Let's talk about why this film, this supposed masterpiece, can be such a frustrating experience the first time you see it.
So you've got this total split, right? On one side, people rave about it. They talk about the incredible colors, that dark, mysterious noir vibe, and its, haunting beauty. But then, on the other side, you have viewers pointing out some pretty major issues. The last act is confusing, the main character Scotty's motivations get really weird, and the plot, well, if you look at it too closely, it makes absolutely no sense.
And what's really wild is, this isn't some new, modern take. When Vertigo first came out in 1958, audiences and critics were just as baffled. They thought the story was totally unbelievable and were kind of put off by its weird, obsessive vibe. So yeah, this movie's journey to the top was definitely not a straight line.
All right, let's start digging. Clue number 1 is all about the stuff you can see, the concrete, filmmaking genius that's impossible to deny. This is the stuff that even if you hate the story, you have to admit is pretty incredible.
Okay, so the big one, the one everyone knows, is the dolly zoom. It's so famous, it's now literally called the Vertigo shot. It's this wild in-camera effect that makes you feel dizzy and disoriented. What they did was pull the entire camera backwards on a dolly, while at the exact same time zooming the lens forward. The result is the background seems to stretch and warp away from you, while the person in the foreground stays the same size. It's a trip.
But here's the brilliant part. This wasn't just some cool trick. Hitchcock was using it to put us right inside the main character Scotty's head. Scotty has acrophobia, a crippling fear of heights. So when he looks down, the world literally seems to fall away from him. It's pure genius because it's not just showing us he's scared, it's making us feel that dizzy, terrifying vertigo right along with him.
And it didn't stop with the camera. The whole movie is this symphony of sight and sound. The use of color is so deliberate. That eerie green that follows Madeline around, for instance. And Bernard Herrmann's score, wow, it's like its own character in the film. This all comes from an old film movement called German Expressionism, which was all about using the world on screen, the sets, the shadows, the colors, to show what a character's feeling inside.
So the technical stuff is amazing, we get it, but that's just the surface. For clue number 2, we have to go deeper, peeling back the psychological layers. This is where we get to what the movie is really about.
Okay, so the number one complaint about this movie is that the murder plot is just ridiculous. It doesn't hold up. But here's a thought. What if that's the point? What if the plot isn't supposed to make logical sense at all?
The big theory, the one that unlocks the whole movie for a lot of people, is that it operates on dream logic. Think about a nightmare you've had. Do things make perfect sense? No. But do they feel incredibly real and terrifying? Absolutely. That's Vertigo. The feeling, the atmosphere, is way more important than the nuts and bolts of the plot. As one viewer put it so well, it's psychosis represented through cinema. The moment you stop trying to piece the plot together like a detective and just let yourself sink into it like a fever dream, that's when the movie's real power hits you. It's a descent into pure obsession. And yeah, it's supposed to feel confusing. And once you're in that dream state, you realize the movie isn't about a mystery at all. It's about the act of looking. There's a fancy psychoanalytic term for it, scopophilia, which basically means getting pleasure from looking at other people as if they're objects. That's Scotty. He's not in love with a person. He's obsessed with an image he can control with his eyes.
And that leads us straight to our third and final clue, the director's gaze. Because Scotty's creepy obsession with watching and controlling a woman's image, well, that wasn't just something in the script. It was a pretty chilling reflection of the man behind the camera, Alfred Hitchcock himself. You might have heard of this film theory concept called the male gaze. It's the idea that movies often show us the world through a man's eyes, where women are presented as passive objects to be looked at. And Vertigo,
Well, it's not just an example of the male gaze, it might be the ultimate movie about the male gaze.
So, a lot of critics argue that Scotty Ferguson is basically Hitchcock. The director was legendary for his obsession with his leading ladies, his Hitchcock blondes. He would control everything about them, their hair, their clothes, how they walked, to mold them into his perfect fantasy.
And you don't have to take the critics' word for it. The star of the movie, Kim Novak, said it herself. She talked about how her real-life experience on set, being pushed and pulled around by Hitchcock, was exactly what her character was going through on screen with Scotty. It's this crazy case of art imitating life.
But here it is. Here's the twist that makes this movie a true masterpiece. It's not just using the male gaze, it's putting it under a microscope and showing us how sick it is. Hitchcock is exposing the dark, pathetic, and destructive side of this kind of obsession. He makes us, the audience, look right along with Scotty, and then he forces us to realize just how ugly that looking really is. So, okay, let's put all the pieces together. We've got the technical brilliance, the dream logic, and this deeply personal, self-critical layer. How did all of that turn a movie that was basically a flop into what many now call the single greatest film ever made? Well, the short answer is, it took decades. After being mostly forgotten in 1958, its reputation just slowly grew. Critics started reevaluating it in the 80s. And then, in 2012, the unthinkable happened. It knocked Citizen Kane off the #1 spot in the huge Sight and Sound poll, a spot Kane had held for 50 straight years. That is a seismic event in the film world.
So what changed? Not the movie. Our understanding of film changed. In the end, the very things that make Vertigo so hard to get into on a first watch are exactly what make it a masterpiece. It's a film that practically begs you to watch it again and again, and every time you do, you find something new in its dizzying spiral.
And that really just leaves us with one last thought. Vertigo's greatness isn't there in spite of its uncomfortable themes of obsession and control. It's there because of them. It makes us look at ugly things about love, identity, and even about why we watch movies in the first place. And that is why, all these decades later, we still can't look away.